So we're starting off chapter 8 with some conversions here. So hopefully you know 1 mile is 5,280 feet, 1 year has 365 days, 1 yard has 3 feet, 1 year is made up of 52 weeks, 1 foot has 12 inches, and 1 inch has 2.54 centimeters. So when we are converting between these different units, we have 4 steps to follow. The first step says that we're going to write down the original measurement, including the units. So here's my original measurement, 2.5 hours. I'm going to multiply it by a fraction with the original units in the denominator. So I'm going to multiply it by a fraction, and I want my original unit to be in the denominator. So if I think about converting from hours to seconds, my next smallest thing I could convert to would be minutes. So in 1 hour, there are 60 minutes. When I multiply these two fractions together, okay, the original units, one from the numerator, one from the denominator, get crossed off. Okay, so now our final answer would be in minutes, but we want it to be in seconds. So now in 1 minute, there are 60 seconds. Again, the numerator label, the denominator label get crossed off. In your calculators, you're typing in 2.5 times 60 times 60 to give us 9,000 seconds. This is our final label. Again, if we wanted to convert 1,575 inches to yards, write down what you started with. Okay, inches I know can go to feet next. So there are 12 inches in 1 foot. Okay, if I multiply these together, there's my two fractions. Inches from the numerator, inches from the denominator cancel. But now I'm in feet. I still need to be in yards. So now if I think about feet in yards, there are 3 feet in 1 yard. So now the feet are gone. I'm left with the yards that we were looking for. Okay, so I need to take 1,575 divided by 12, or sorry, divided by 36 when we multiply 12 times 3 on the bottom. And that'll leave me with 43.75 yards. There's my final label. So when we're talking about area in this chapter, this is saying the amount of space inside a two-dimensional shape. We use square units when we measure area. So if we were trying to figure out how many square feet are in a square yard, it would be helpful to draw a picture. If this is my square yard, that means it's 1 yard by 1 yard. Okay? A lot of people say that there's 3 square feet in a square yard, but really on each side there's 3 feet by 3 feet. So that really means that there's 9 feet squared in 1 square yard. So we're looking at exact answers again. You either leave pi at the end of your answer if it has pi in it. Rounded answers, you're going to need to put pi into the calculator and round appropriately like we did last chapter. Again, in chapter 6, we just talked about your circumference formulas. There were 2 of them. C equals 2 pi r if you were given the radius, and C equals pi times the diameter. When we look at the area of a circle, we're using pi r squared. We must know the radius. So if we were trying to find the exact area of this circle, they give us 13.6 is the diameter. So we're first going to divide that by 2 to find the radius. So our radius is really 6.8. So when we use our area formula, pi r squared, we'll take 6.8 squared, multiply it by pi if this is exact. We will leave that as 46.24 pi feet squared. If we were measuring this in inches, we need to think about how many square inches are in a square foot. Again, if this was my square and I was 1 foot by 1 foot, that really means that there's 12 inches by 12 inches. So to find the area here, there'd be 144 square inches in 1 square foot. So if I know my final area was in feet squared, I'm going to multiply that. I'm going to put feet squared on the bottom and 144 inches squared on the top. There's my two fractions. I multiply them together. Feet squared from the top cancels with feet squared on the bottom. So we are really left with 6,658.56 pi feet. Oops, sorry, now we're in inches. Inches squared. Right, we were left with inches squared. We were left with, oh boy, inches squared there. So here's our final label with inches squared. Now we want to find the area if the circumference is 10 pi inches. So when we're looking for area, we need to use pi r squared. So we need to use the circumference formula first that has the radius in it. We'll do this part second. So plug in what we know. They told us the circumference was 10 pi. That equals 2 times pi times the radius. To solve this for r, we need to divide by 2 pi. Right? Everything over here cancels. Here our pi's cancel. So we're left with 5 for the radius. So in our area formula then, we have pi times 5 squared to get 25 pi. And if we were rounding this to tenths, type it into your calculator. 78.5 inches squared. Then we're trying to find the exact circumference if A equals 225 pi. So if that area equals pi r squared, we'll have to figure out the radius first, so then we can find the circumference. So plug in what we know. They told us 225 pi, don't forget your pi, for the area. Okay, your pi's here cancel. You're left with r squared equals 225. In order to get rid of the squared, you need to take the square root. The square root of 225 is 15. So now that we know the radius, we're using the circumference formula that uses the radius. If this is exact, 2 times 15 gives us 30 pi. And we're measuring this in yards, not yards squared, because we started with area, but now it's asking for the circumference. And for this last one, if we're finding area exactly, got to work with some fractions here. So they gave us the radius as 55 thirds. All right, so both the 55 and the 3 get squared. 55 squared is 3,025. 3 squared is 9. So that really gives us 3,025 ninths. That is in lowest terms pi miles squared since it's area. If we were rounding that to the nearest mile, type that into your calculator. You get 1,056 miles squared.